Welcome to our August 18th edition of Monday Night Memories. Special guest this week, Akin Ayodele, of course, the Purdue defensive end, lucky number 13, that played huge in Purdue's Rose Bowl run. You'll enjoy the interview with Akin. He's got a lot to say about his Purdue career and how much it shaped him. Want to thank our sponsor, Chariot Auto Group, the good folks at Twin City, Nate Barrett, who is often my co-host on Monday Night Memories. We appreciate them very, very much. So without further ado, here is Akin Ayodele in our Rose Bowl reflections. Alan Carpick from goldenblack.com. Very pleased to be joined by Akin Ayodele, who has we've had conversations before about Purdue sports, his career at Purdue, and all he has done after that. But today's topic is Rose Bowl reflections and looking back. You still look like you can play, so that 25-year thing doesn't bother you at all. But the fact that it's the silver anniversary of that Rose Bowl season, Akin, as you look at that and you say, this was a very, in your sporting life, one of your great accomplishments, I would presume. But talk about just that reflection as you look back at, in the fact that 2000 season was 25 years ago.
Yeah, to say 25 years, felt like yesterday. I would be lying, but it did go by fast. A lot has changed. A lot less hair, as you can tell. Personally, 25 years ago, young kid didn't know nothing at all. Was all about just trying to get a good education and hanging out with his friends and teammates. And life does get more complicated, but one of the things that I think of and the memories of that time and how great it was to set a goal, accomplish it with people that you just enjoyed spending most of your time, if not all of your time with. The challenges that we had going into the season, the uncertainty whether we would even amass to be on top of the Big Ten. The critics that necessarily didn't give us a lot of credit or chance going to that season. The slow pace of starting the season, the quirkiness, the most random situation that would happen, and then all of a sudden everything just clicking all at once and building momentum. And then winning it, obviously, in a home game against your arch rival, IU, and cementing and carrying the trophy at the end. I still remember one of my vivid memories, and I don't think this will ever escape me. After the game, walking into the stands and looking at the sea of Purdue alumni, Purdue fans, Purdue faithfuls, local Purdue fans across Ross-Ade Stadium. And, I've been fortunate to be in a lot of sporting events and situations and played in a ton after that. And nothing like that stands out, but that one situation is cemented in my mind as one of my favorites, at least top 3 favorite moments, to look at the sea of Purdue fans and to hoist the trophy and say, we did it all, not just for our teammates and our coaches and our friends and family, but also for Purdue faithful fans who had waited, a bit of time to watch us do that.
And that says a lot considering your distinguished NFL career and the places stops you made in that league. It was an interesting year from a defensive standpoint, and because you had, I think if my memory serves, you had to make kind of a little bit of a position switch mid-year. Mm-hmm. And you were a grizzled veteran on this group of a bunch of young pups that were talented, obviously. Many of those guys, if not all, and the Landon Johnsons, the Craig Terrells, the Sean Phillips, all freshmen, the Gilbert Gardners, all ended up playing in the league. So they weren't lack of talent. But what was that what was that learning experience like for you? I mean, you being a junior on that team, and also, as I recall, Brock Speck had you at the outside, kind of a more of a linebacker position, putting you back down more in a rush end situation, and how that impacted that year for you.
Yeah. It all really started in the offseason, right? I think we had a ton of great talent recruit that came onto the team. And you can probably keep me honest here. I think 11 of the freshman class that came on got to play that season, or if not start, right? Yeah. But all got to play. And I remember the offseason of spending time with, like the Gilbert Gardners and the Landon Johnsons and the Kelly Butlers and the Stewart Swaggarts and Kudavitas and, all these guys and Sean Phillips. And I, especially on the defensive side, understood the important role that they would play because they were filling a void of some great veterans who had left, right? And knowing the important role that they would need to play for us to have any success, whether it was a starting role like Stewart coming in and all of a sudden making a direct impact on the defense and secondary, or if it was just a rotation with Sean Phillips and myself and Kevin and Brian and and Ike, all these guys that I think of on the defensive front, and with Matt Mitrion and Craig Terrell and all these guys. So having young talent that was eager, but also they were open to learn and to grow and knew the role that they would play whenever they were in the game was an important play for us to have that success. And as far as me, to be honest, I've always just loved smacking people, running around, and chasing the ball. So it really didn't matter whether I was playing outside linebacker or playing inside or playing defensive end. But the game that changed, I would say, that cemented the defense for us was probably that Michigan game. Coming in first half, not really getting the momentum or stopping, Brady and their offense, H-Train. And then we went into halftime kind of figuring things out and said, okay, let's go back to our bread and butter. Let's go back to the basics. Akin, we need you to hold down, the defensive end side on the right side or the left side. And we're just going to attack from the front, right? Let the front seven do their thing. And that switch. And once we realized the chemistry and the formula we had with that front four, we said, why mess with this? Why change this up? Let this run for us through the season. And that's what allowed us to have that anchor and that consistency across the front for the rest of the season.
28 points in the first half you gave up. You gave up 3 in the second.
Yeah. And I dropped a pick. I had Brady. I dropped the pick in the second half, which would have probably sealed the game a lot sooner. But we went back out there, stopped them again, and gave Drew and the entire offense the ball, to go down and allowed Travis Dorsch to kick that field goal. And a game of many emotions, many highs, a lot of lows in the first half. I think of the fans, and I'm sure most at that time watching that game, it bit off the entire nails and cuticles, just how the emotional coaster ride of the ups and downs. But the way we fought back really showed our grit, throughout the entire game and the season.
We do some research at Gold and Black from time to time, and this I've told everybody this. No Purdue team before or since has come back from 18 points behind to win. And you guys are still the only team in history down 28-10 at the half. And of course, that 33-31 win over Michigan. It was a weird year, and you kind of alluded to it because in some ways, it certainly was a roller coaster year because, you had a tough loss at Notre Dame where you really were good defensively, but Gary Godsey, last set of downs, you couldn't stop them, and when you needed to at the end, and they score and beat you at the end, but you had a good team defensive game. Penn State, some special teams errors, those are games you still shake your head over, but that still shows a lot of resilience that staring down the barrel of a 28-10 deficit at halftime at Michigan and thinking the season could be going out the window. What do you remember sitting in that locker room? I know Chucky Okobe was vocal, as I understand. So was Joe Tiller, I presume. But what do you recall? As you said, you kind of talked about how you had to change some things in the second half, but had to change the mindset too.
Yeah, surprisingly, as poorly as we played defensively in that game, and maybe some offense, it wasn't so much Tiller was upset or yelled at us in any way. I think what gave us a lot of confidence was his ability in that sense. Coach Till was all about the psyche and, and finding ways to get in your mind. But he did show a lot of confidence and calmness at halftime that, hey, if we just omit some of our self-inflicted wounds, and if we just stick to the game plan and understand how they're attacking us and execute, we're right back in the game, right? We're right back in the game. And knowing that we were making those adjustments and having me come back to the front four, and putting some more speed on the linebacker position, and then just having the secondary, fill in where they can. Things just kind of just all worked out. And I know, I think maybe Matt Mitrione also had yelled at some point, and I might have said a couple words, but there was an aura in the air that it was just different. It's hard to describe or put into words, but it was definitely different. That it reinforced and it gave us an assurance that this wasn't a game that was out of our hands. And if we just took it one step at a time, one play at a time, one series at a time, one game at a time, that we would be able to overcome any challenge and get on top. And I think that game was what cemented the mantra for the season with Joe Tiller, just win one more game.
Yeah.
And I just remember that was something that he always repeated after the game, and just winning just one more game. And it was a way for us to have the confidence to move forward.
You did have some personalities on that football team, and you were a stoic, cerebral dude. You still are. And I'm presuming things I don't know anything about, but I do think the Matt Mitriones of the world and the Stuart Schweigerts and even Nico on down. There's some guys that were some real personalities that even Sean Phillips, maybe more in his later days when he got his wings under him, but guys that had an edge to them. And you're not choir boys when you're necessarily playing defensive football, but talk about all your organizational things you've done throughout not only your playing career but your professional career, trying to lead that group. And even guys you talked about, Kevin Nesfield, who was a big part of that, very intellectual guy, and of course Warren Ike Moore has gone on to a great career I think in the pharmacy world, and he had a conversation with Drew Brees after the fourth interception against Ohio State, and may have turned some things that way. But it was just a really interesting blend of guys that made that defense one of the best in Purdue annals.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great point, right? I firmly believe, because of my time at West Lafayette and Purdue, is that no one does anything great themselves.
Yeah.
And it takes great talent, but also it takes great personality to do great things, right? And we definitely did not lack that in personality. No, across the board, Matt and all the successes he had at Purdue, and then post collegiate career, in the NFL and in the MMA world. Vinny, even on the offense, I think he enjoyed more of his time with the defensive guys just because of all the personalities that we had on the side of defense. But it did require, myself, the Jason Lorzell, to have the balance, right? To be, and even Adrian Beasley, right, for us to have that balance where there was a steady approach, a steady mindset, a steady leadership, amongst the team. Whereas you give people the free range to be themselves, but when it was time to lock in, you could lock in, and they trusted us, to help them get them there. There were moments, where I was not yelling at anyone, but just speaking to them and giving them motivation or lifting them up in a way that reassuring that they're talent and they were on this team for a reason. They were playing for a reason. We talked about the young talent. There was a lot of those guys that early on didn't have the confidence that, or were somewhat, nervous of getting in scenarios or games where they could get exposed, but reassuring them that, listen, I wouldn't have any other person in this position but you, and I think that helped a lot to the point where years later, 25 years later, I'm still connected with a lot of those guys, and we check in on each other just because of those moments that you have with each other, being in the trenches and fighting the good fight, and and having those memories.
Yeah, and it was an eclectic and talented group. I have to take you through that March through October, which is maybe is hard to argue, maybe the greatest month in the modern era of Purdue football. Certainly, you beat Michigan. You go up to Northwestern, a team that would end up sharing the league title with you guys, and you dominate them. In fact, I had one of my favorite. It was actually a non-cover, but we ran it as a full-page picture of you walking off the field, kind of high-fiving these guys in a game. Damian Anderson's really talented running back. You guys dominated that game. Did that game, and that was October the 14th, so week 2 in October. Yes, the confidence of beating Michigan, and certainly Michigan was 6th ranked, and you had to have that game if you were going to get to where you wanted to get to. But what did that Northwestern game, as you recall, up in Evanston, mean to you guys from a confidence standpoint?
Yeah, I'm going to be very transparent on this call because I felt at the time, and this is how I felt.
Yeah.
Playing Northwestern was one of those games we should always win.
Yeah.
We should just always win. But for some reason, it was always a dogfight with them. Maybe it's just a proximity, regionally, or I'm sure we had a lot of Illinois and Chicago area, teammates that, they all could relate to. And you just never knew at what point in that game that the tides would turn and we would just log it together. Every year that I was there, it was always Northwestern was always a battle. And so while we, winning with a lot of confidence, there was still some uncertainty just because I just remember the game. There was an aura in there, just didn't feel quite, it wasn't flowing like it should have. Like we drew it up and generally it doesn't, but there are things where you just come together and, you just run with it. And we just could never really, in that game, just run away because they they're fighters as well. But somehow, some way, it always came back to just take it one game at a time, one play at a time, and do your job, right? Reminding each other, before we went out on the field on the defensive side, do your job, do your job. And if you do your job, things will work out in our favor. And somehow, some way, we came up with some big plays. I think there was a interception as well, and a fumble recovery there, and we're able to seal the deal. But it was definitely a dogfight.
Yeah, they had an offense, and you guys got things rolling in the second half, and were able to get the job done. Okay, now we're going to play the where were you at the moment part of our show, so to speak, or your memories. Wisconsin the following week, you make the huge sack in overtime that really sets up Craig Terrell's block and Ashante's scoop and score.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember? And you played so much football and played in big moments that maybe you don't on your head on the pillow moment, you don't have a clear vision of that. But that sack in overtime puts Wisconsin at a very really too far to attempt a field goal. They chose to do it, and the rest is history. But do you have any recollections of that specifically? And then the sound of Craig Terrell blocking that kick, I think with his shoulder pad, literally.
Yeah.
And then Ashante scooping. Were you on? I don't know if you were on the.
I was on the field.
You were on the field, so you were chasing Ashante down the. I don't know if you were part of the parade, so to speak, but tell me what you remember out of that.
Yeah, I remember all. I remember it all. It was a third down play, and I wasn't, to be quite honest, I wasn't sure if they were going to attempt to try to run it, at start down and long, or I don't know the distance, but generally they were a pounding running team, and they had the bodies, they had the size, offensive linemen, and generally they're, and good running backs as usual. But I trusted my instincts.
Yeah.
I trusted my instincts and just felt it was one of those, just get to the quarterback and accelerated, use my speed and athleticism. And I think part of what set them back to was the way I made the tackle, where I grabbed them and spin them backwards, throw them back, which even gave them a further distance to kick the ball. But the cool part of that was I did not see the ball hitting Craig's shoulder pads. I just heard the thump.
Yeah.
And when I heard the thump, I started looking for the ball and saw Shante grab it, and wasn't sure what was going to happen next. But he and there's a story, that I'm not sure if a lot of people know. He tore his ACL 9 months before.
Yeah.
And I tell this story to this day. It's a miracle that he was able to get back on the football field and play as well as he did, not being fully 100%, because there's always a psychological factor when you get a major injury like that. It takes about a full year to fully recover and trust your athleticism, to fully engage and come back. And he was able to play solid, and that game showed up. And in that moment, I was so excited for him and himself, knowing that what he had gone through to be at that game at that moment, and then to make that big play and score. I was actually at the bottom of the pile and had a moment of fear because I couldn't breathe because of all that was on top of all of us. But it was a great win for Purdue.
Yeah. Beating Wisconsin and Purdue are two things that don't happen. It hasn't happened since 2003 after you graduated. They haven't beaten Wisconsin in Ross-Ade since 1997. So before you came back. So that is an amazing accomplishment to be able to get that done. Okay, the next week everybody talks about Ohio State, and it was all on the line. It was all on the line every week that month. I get it, but there's always talk about you have number 15 on your team, you got a chance. And yet, you saw that one slipping away after Drew's fourth interception late in that game. What do you remember about the play? You were obviously not on the field when Drew found his fourth choice and hit Seth Morales on the 64-yard touchdown pass. But what's your takeaway 25 years later of that win over the Buckeyes?
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite games. If there's one game that I would, if you were to ask me, what clip, what game would you want people to watch? It would be that game. Personally, I had a great game. I will pat myself on the back on that one. But there was a lot that, from an athleticism perspective, that Ohio State offense had an advantage. Offensive line, receiving core, they were all recognized nationally, right? On the defensive side as well, Ohio State had some studs as well. And knowing that the ups and downs that we had offensively, but defensively, I thought we were able to consistently show up. I think I had 3 sacks, an interception. One of the sacks came in late in the fourth quarter, and I gave myself probably a headache on that last one. But the excitement of knowing that we were showing up at a pivotal moment in with a Big Ten top school football powerhouse. And Purdue football showing up everyone defensively made a play that game. I just remember going to the sideline and giving the entire defensive side high fives or speaking them up and saying, "Great job, keep it up, keep it up." I think that really gave us then the confidence to continue on, beyond that. But that's one of my favorite games, to highlight or speak to.
Yeah, Ohio State scores 27 points, but they scored. Nate Clements had the long punt return in that game. You guys were pretty remarkable defensively against anytime. Any Ohio State team is tough to handle from a defensive standpoint. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and a couple key things happened. You had a bye week the following week, and it was important in the way things worked out that Michigan Northwestern beats Michigan in a 54-51 game up in Evanston the week that you guys didn't play. Then you go up to Michigan State and don't play well. And TJ Duckett was a steamroller that day, and you lose that game 30-10. What was that? But then you come to find out you get a reprieve because Iowa beats Northwestern. You're back in the driver's seat. But what did you learn from that in the Michigan State game? I've had guys say, boy, it was a bad week to have a bye after Ohio State. What do you attribute that downturn temporary in the season?
Yeah. I think at that point, Coach Tiller reminded us that we controlled our own destiny.
Yeah.
And then all we had to do was just win one more game. And, Monday morning quarterback, you look back now and say, I wish we could have drew up the schedule and kept it going, right? Yeah. But I truly feel like everything happens for a reason. And we went through that game just laid an egg, really didn't show up. The weather wasn't kind to us, but Ohio State was playing in the same condition. I mean, Michigan State was playing in the same condition as well. It was a home advantage for them. They had a 6'2", 250-pound running back that once he got his momentum going, it just hurt. It hurt to tackle. And we just didn't show up across the board. And I think that reminded us, that one, we're humans, you don't always show up your best, but two, that it requires us to all play our best collectively. And so it allowed us to reset, go back, check our egos, and then come back into, the high level game playing Boilermakers that we knew that we could be.
We'll restart this. Alan Karpic back with Akin Ayodele. You still, after Northwestern, you find out that Northwestern loses to Iowa, and you got it all truly in front of you when Indiana comes to town. Everybody you talked already about the celebration on the field, chasing around Antoine Randall, which you had to do a couple times in your career, and that would still wear you out 25 years later because he was amazing in terms of that. But that Indiana game was a special moment in the history of Purdue football, and I'm sure to be part of that and be on that field and get the job done when you were expected to, but still to get it done was important.
Yeah. Going into that game, I think I avoided as many media discussions or reading any articles because, yes, I think we were favored that game, but knowing the experience that we've had with IU and Antoine at quarterback defensively, I knew it was no easy feat. And regardless of the talent that he had around him, he was going to battle. And I just, we had to evolve or change to meet the offense that they were playing. And we don't get to see, at that time or even now, a lot of true option quarterbacks like their offense ran. And there's a lot of discipline, right? There's not a lot of tackles that you may make because you're responsible for a certain man or task, and it's the most mundane. For me at the defensive end position, just hit the fullback. But I see the quarterback, and Brock Spack numerous times during practice would yell at me and remind us that you have to be disciplined.
Yeah.
And I think that really led to us just having a solid game all around and showing up. Again, it wasn't easy. Antoine at quarterback, it was like trying to play Allen Iverson on the basketball court, right?
Good analogy. Yep.
Yeah, he definitely will make you look silly out there. But again, for me, the way we played overall, everyone showed up, was disciplined, but then knowing the offense would do what Drew and Vinny and the entire offense caliber showing up and putting plays up and scoring, and then just accomplishing something that hadn't happened for quite some time in the modern era for Purdue football and Purdue University. For me, it was one of the greatest accomplishments of my time at that time at Purdue, and knowing that I was part of history, that no one could ever take that from us. And regardless of wherever our journeys led beyond that, we had this collective moment together. And to see the sea of Purdue fans, I mean, you had 20-something-year-olds crying with 60-something-year-olds in tears because they were so happy and so excited for what had just happened out there on the football field and that entire season. That always is just a vivid memory in my head, and seeing how we were able to bring an entire community and entire university and institution together.
All right, the opportunity to go to Pasadena and run on that field, and while the game didn't go, it was also a very talented quarterback at Washington, but that opportunity to be in that arena, a lasting memory, I'm sure, 25 years later.
Yeah. Playing in the Rose Bowl, and everything that was said and mentioned that it was that and much more.
Yeah.
In all the bowl games that we played in my collegiate career, but to be part of the Rose Bowl history and playing against Washington, the planning community, they did a fantastic job the entire week. But again, I would always say that my favorite point was our pep rally.
Yeah.
The game itself didn't fall. It didn't go the way we expected. I can say this now, 25 years later, I felt that the officiating was definitely bit off or tilted.
They were holding you the whole game, right?
Absolutely, every single play.
That's what I thought.
But the support from all the way from the Midwest, from West Lafayette, to see Purdue fans show up at the pep rally and the color black and gold in the stands was a proud moment, that we were loyal fans that would travel, across the country to watch their team play at a site at the Rose Bowl. The game itself, man, it definitely showed in a way it mirrored the season, the ups and downs, right? The challenges we may have had in certain positions. They definitely had exploited and understood a way to attack us. I thought they had a phenomenal quarterback who really understood their offense and knew how to play to that. Lexus, the running back, I thought he had a great game as well. On the offensive side, Drew, being Drew, he did give us a chance, to be in position to keep it close. And I think we just came up short with not making the plays, most of the time. But I think of so this is where the discipline comes into, and I mentioned that earlier when we played IU, and this, I do remember myself not being disciplined, and there was a moment where I should have kept attacking the fullback on an option read, and I went after the quarterback, and they had a long run there, and again, it just showed up when we're not doing your job. You have those plays that happen, but again, there hasn't been at the time any other bowl games that I could say really lived up to all the hype in terms of the granddaddy of all bowl games in the Rose Bowl. And I was so proud of our team being able to make it that season and getting the Purdue fan faithfuls up in LA.
Marquise Tuiasosopo, I think I still pronounce his name, and boy, he was good that day and elusive, to say the least. Excuse me. And when you look at the chance too, and I wanted, Drew Brees, you obviously chased him around your fair share in the NFL as well. But when you have a guy like that on your team, and obviously you're the warrior leader on the defensive side of the ball with some other guys. Drew does, was an All-American type player and one of the greats of all time in the NFL too. But what, again, looking through the lens of 25 years, what did he mean from a team leadership standpoint and things that you learned from watching him operate as a Boilermaker?
Yeah, one of the things I took away from my time with Drew, two things. His work ethic was one, and his competitiveness.
Yeah.
Drew never backed down from a battle. I think of in terms of off the field antics, being out around town. Whenever there was a competition, Drew did not shy away to step in and compete his butt off to try to win. I think of thinking that I was going to be the first, in the Mollenkopf to do a workout or to get some extra time in, and Drew was already in there sweating, going through his drills, his exercises. I think of the conversations that we would have, and the intellect or his ability to pay attention to details and then communicate that in a way that allowed you to see through his lens. Those things I was able. I personally felt like really added, and for me personally, I was able to take in to the next level, understanding how finite you have to be about your processes. Yeah. How your competitiveness has to always show up when it mattered. Yeah. And just being, you can be a good person and also be a great leader.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't white or black or picking one or the other. Is the both do. It does matter. And taking that into the real world and taking that into your professional journey, also it will always work out for you. So Drew was a great example for all of us, in his time there, and even now, many years later, he's obviously grown and has accomplished a lot, but he's still that same person who loves people, is a great leader, and will show up, a great competitor. So I'm grateful for our time together, and I think we've all benefited from having a Drew Brees, in the locker room.
All right, I want to ask you about what you're doing on a personal, but wearing jersey number 13, you and Glenn Robinson, I think the two most famous Boilermakers to wear jersey 13. Did that come? Was that always? Because obviously in the NFL you couldn't wear that number, but talk about that and how you got to that number. Is that just? Yeah, I know all the guys now and want to wear the single digit numbers or the lowest digits they can. I understand that's a trend. That wasn't necessarily the trend back then. But how'd you get to number 13?
Yeah, so when I was part of Joe Tiller's original draft class. Right. And I had to go to junior college. So at junior college at Coffeyville, Kansas, I wore the number 1. And in going through the whole recruiting process, I wouldn't say Scott Downing, but somebody promised me that I could keep my number 1. And then I got to West Lafayette, and Ashante, who also played in the same conference at Garden City, had an interview where he said something about, either Joe Tiller or somebody promised him the number 1 as well. It was in the article, and that he would race anyone, for the number. He could outrun him, and so to avoid the conflict, Tiller pulled the number at the time.
Yeah,
I think Winston.
Donald Winston, yeah.
Yes,
I think Donald changed
Donald Winston. Yeah,
25 to 1.
Yep. Yeah. And so Joe, Coach Tiller pulled the number 1, and Mike Shandrick and the equipment managers tried to put me in the number 59, Marion Roosevelt Coven. I said, there's no way I'm going to come back behind the greatness of Roosevelt. I need to be my own person.
Yeah.
And as we were deciding which number I would wear, and the number 13 has always been unlucky. For most people, especially when you're gambling or in an elevator. So in my mind, concoctioned that the number 13 would be lucky for Purdue, but unlucky for our opponents.
Yeah, and it
So
worked
that's
out.
why I picked the number 13.
I don't think I ever heard that story. So that's a good story. And yeah, blame it on Scott Downing, Mike Shandrick, anybody down there. They're still Mike's still going hard in Purdue athletics as well, and a friend as well. All right, tell me, get me caught up on what you're doing in your professional life and your personal life that you care to share.
Yeah,
You've done a lot of great things, not only in the NFL but after it, and you keep growing. That's one thing I've always noticed about you. But tell me what's up.
absolutely. Yeah, my personal life, I'm married with my wife. I have two young daughters, soon to be 5 and soon to be 3.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, I'm a late bloomer in that in that aspect. I've always been a late bloomer, but I tell folks it's probably one of the best decisions that I made. Being patient with myself and obviously playing in the league and then transitioning out of the league, but getting married late in life, and I'm a completely different man. And as you know, if you are a parent and have a partner, it's the best decision that you've ever made, because they pull you in so many different ways. And the topic of growth, you're constantly growing and you become a better person because you have them in your life. And so I'm grateful for that. In terms of professionally and business wise, a few years ago, I transitioned from the financial world where I had my own wealth management company with some partners, and transitioned into the insurance risk management space.
Yeah.
I worked for the #1 boutique firm for several years and then got recruited. And now the last 3 years, I've been leading the South Florida team at Gallagher. So
Yeah.
Gallagher, which had home offices in Rolling Meadows, Chicago. It's a global risk management insurance organization. So I'm the market president for Florida, for South Florida here, where I reside. And we're doing all the great things. It's really about our people strategy and helping organizations really identify their strategies to connect with their organization and their employees.
All right, Coach Barry Odom, we could use guys like you. It's a whole different world, as you well know. You've got to get guys now in today's world to play together. Purdue's got 50-some new guys, and going to have a challenge. You're going to have the opportunity to get up to West Lafayette anytime in the near term. I mean, you got a 5 and 3-year-old, so you've got your hands full. But
well, the cool thing, as you know, about young kids, one of my daughters loves football.
Yeah.
We were there last year. Finally brought my family up there, and Purdue did a great job hosting and taking care of us. Right. And so she's already talking about coming back to West Lafayette for a game, and so we plan to come up there at some point during the season.
Barry Odom's got some Joe Tiller qualities. You hope he has the success that Joe does. It's going to be interesting. We would look forward to seeing you when you come to West Lafayette. Akin, thanks so much for the time today, above and beyond the call, but always interesting and very insightful about memories of this Rose Bowl season.
Thank you.
I want to thank Akin Ayodele for an excellent interview. We always appreciate his time. Also, the good folks at Chariot Auto Group. Reminder that we'll have another edition of Monday Night Memories. I think next week will be Tim Stratton and then Jim Chaney upcoming. We'll try to roll these out throughout the course of the year, or the football season, I should say. But we thank those that have participated. And most of all, we thank Akin Ayodele and the good folks at Chariot Auto Group. Have a great rest of your week, everybody.